Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Red Zone, brought to you by the Texas Real Estate Research Center at Texas A&M University. I'm Haley Reeder, Communications Specialist. Today is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. On this day in 1896, the celebrated Crash at Crush occurred 15 miles north of Waco in McLennan County. As a publicity stunt for the Missouri-Kansas-Texas Railroad, or the Katy Railroad, two railroad engines were deliberately crashed head-on at the non-existent town of Crush. Elaborate preparations and extensive publicity brought a crowd of more than 40,000. After a 2-mile run, the two engines, the bright green number 999 and the brilliant red number 1001, met in a fiery crash. Flying debris killed 3 people and injured 6 more. By nightfall, the site was abandoned. In the early 20th century, Scott Joplin, known as the King of Ragtime, commemorated the event in a piano piece called The Great Crush Collision March. Now on to today's podcast. 2020 and 2021 were unprecedented years in many ways, and one of those ways was a record increase in Texas real estate license holders. According to the Texas Real Estate Commission, or TREC, the state's license holder count increased by around 16,000 year over year at the end of August 2021. This means over 218,000 people in Texas hold a license under TREC, the largest amount ever. What caused this record increase in licensees? Has the pandemic permanently changed how license holders practice? TREC Executive Director Chelsea Buchholz and Chair Scott Kesner join us to share their insights. Thanks for being here.
It's our pleasure.
More people than ever now have a Texas real estate license. Why are so many Texans opting for a real estate career? Is this a result of COVID, a natural increase linked to a growing population, or something else?
That's a great question. I'm going to start. Then Chelsea has a lot of information, a lot of facts. When COVID hit, I think it gave people a lot of time, at home and working virtually and probably having some time and some the financial ability to maybe take the classes. And the commission was really kind of ahead of the game as far as virtual classes being offered. I know if any schools were not doing virtual, they certainly went to virtual and they had a high attendance. I think the hot market certainly played into it. And the population trend, people moving to Texas, certainly had a large part of it. So I think it was kind of a combination of everything, the hot market, the population trend as far as moving, and then the time and the availability of virtual classes. I think it was almost a perfect storm. And I know Chelsea has some specific numbers to kind of go with that. So I'll kind of pass it to her.
It'll be interesting to look back in several years to see just if we have a better understanding of why we are at where we're at. But this year, we've had a record number of, a record increase of license holders. We ended the year at the end of August, so just a day ago, at 218,735 TREC license holders. That's an increase year over year of about 16,000. And for as long as we've been collecting this data, actually, we've probably been collecting the data longer, but I have a chart that shows the last 20 years, and this is the largest increase by far. But interestingly, the year before, 2020, the first year of COVID, was one of the smallest increases. We increased just over about 5,000. So, it seems like people paused and looked around to, what are we going to do? I'm not going to make any decisions in life. And then they kind of dove in whole hog. I've read a lot about people taking inventory of their life and trying to adjust how they, just to increase quality of life. And that a lot of that seems to be around, working more efficiently and cutting out commutes and working perhaps from home. And the real estate careers naturally have some of that built in. So it's a scalable career. It doesn't require that commute. It doesn't require the 8 to 5 life, but that doesn't make it necessarily an easy career to make a living in. So it's just it's very interesting time. We also, of course, just got the Texas population numbers, and Texas gained the most residents of any state since 2010. We had a 16% increase. That's 4 million new citizens of Texas. But we increased at TREC more than that. In 2010, we had about 150,000 license holders. So we jumped by close to 70. That's about a 30% increase. So we're watching numbers really closely. This is a very interesting time. I don't know. I've heard Jim Gaines say, don't compare last year to this year. And this is just a really interesting time. And I'm taking that advice to heart.
And just a real quick follow-up. I mean, even though a lot of the state is open again, a lot of people are still attending virtually. All the brick and mortar schools are full. I mean, so there is still a huge demand for the classes. I know the local academy here in El Paso, I went by there yesterday and it's full. We've talked to people in the Dallas and Houston area and they're full. So like Chelsea said, I'm real interested to see if this trend slows down, or do we add another 16,000 licensees? I mean, I was chairman of Texas Realtors in 2015, which is really not that long ago. And we were below 100,000 members at that time. And I think we're 140,000 now, as far as the association. So there's been steady growth, but last year was just a huge, tremendous. I mean, 16,000, that's just, I don't think anybody saw that coming in. Will it continue? Only time will tell.
How has the pandemic affected license holders?
The pandemic, not only license holders, we talked about, the virtual classes and the virtual testing. And I mean, even the advanced classes, Legal 1, Legal 2, broker responsibility, even that was offered virtually. But as far as the business, I mean, it certainly impacted the business. I mean, I don't remember, agents having gloves and footies and Lysol and wipes and everything when they're showing houses, showing a lot of houses virtually. And when I say showing houses virtually, you always had, the videos and the different types of video showings. But this is truly a virtual showing where you're walking through the house and you're opening the closets and you're showing the ceilings and you really have to give them a full detail of showing the house. And, we even had people, say, there's an odor, there's this, there's that, because you are truly, you're their eyes, their ears, and their nose. I went out with my wife one day to virtually show a house to someone out of town, and she spent the first 10 minutes on the neighborhood, on the street, on the neighbors' cars, on the neighbors' houses, the park across the street, everything about the neighborhood before you even got into the house. So I think that had a huge impact. I think some showing apps, scheduling appointments. I've got an appointment from 3 o'clock to 3:20. Someone else is going to be there at 3:20. We can't have two people there at the same time, during the social distancing. So I think a lot of agents had to work together to get through that. And then, just digital signatures. I remember one night my wife had a signature signed and I drove across town and had it signed. We're seeing almost everything digital signatures. We're seeing a lot of virtual closings where the agent is out in the parking lot if they have questions, not allowed in the closing. So it just totally changed everything. Taking two cars to show houses, where the client's in their car and you're in your own. So, there was a lot of, there's a lot of changes, pivoting or whatever you want to call it, as far as getting it done. the numbers itself are just huge. How many houses were sold last year during COVID? And all that is with an inventory shortage. What would the numbers have been if there was not an inventory shortage? Who knows? We still have a lot of people that want to buy a house, want to move up, but they're afraid to sell theirs because they can't find anything. But I think just virtual and just making sure everybody was protected. One big thing we had in Texas, I'm also licensed in New Mexico, is the governor always classified us as essential. And so we were always able to list and sell and show and close houses. And I think that was huge. And I'll kind of hand it over to Chelsea for her.
Sure. I'll tell you a few ways in which it's affected license holders from the TREC perspective. But first, I just need to commend all of our license holders. The word that we keep using during this pandemic is pivoting. And I think our license holders have done that very well in such an unknown time. And it's been necessary because of high demand. And I'm really proud of the way that we've seen people innovate and rise to the occasion and to keep people safe. The most important thing that we do in our job is to protect the consumer. That's really the mission of the agency. And we've seen how the field has changed, but the consumer continues to be protected. And from an agency perspective, we saw a change in how people were being educated, a bit of a shift to virtual learning. Of course, that was already an option before the pandemic, and so it was just utilized more. Of course, just like Scott said, the brick and mortar classes are open and full, and the pandemic really seems to just have broadened the opportunities and ways in which someone can be educated, which is a huge benefit. At the beginning of the pandemic, we saw some delays. It took a while to schedule an exam just because of the need for social distancing, and some exam centers were closed and that type of thing. We're seeing that a whole lot less now, which is great. Our exam provider has again pivoted and accommodated for this new world. And the other way in which it's affected some is that you can't just pop in our office anymore. We are working to open our building again. Of course, there's a surge in Texas that is true in Austin, and so we pulled back on that opening. But so you have to plan ahead. But of course, there's a lot available on our website, a lot of self-service options. And we see that being utilized more and more. And even, during the pandemic, the mail was taking a long time for a lot of different reasons. USPS was a little bit slower. We let things quarantine for a while. We're not doing that anymore. Just the process was much slower. And so it took a while to process a check. So we're seeing more online payments and that sort of thing. And I want to commend those who had a learning curve in that regard, who have done the work to just figure that out. It can be very intimidating, I think, to figure some of that out, but many people have done that just for ease and because they're, during certain seasons during the pandemic, there weren't any other options.
What important rule and contract changes should licensees be aware of?
Oh, goodness. There's, we could probably go on and on. I'll highlight a few changes and then also just a few things that we're seeing more and more of. In the spring, we finalized a big round of contract changes. The commission adopted form changes to our contracts, and there was a lot. We went through several rounds of comments, took a lot of feedback regarding that, and those became mandatory April 1st. The big items there, the first was to paragraph 5, changing the way that the option and earnest monies are paid. Those are now delivered to the title company. Some people love that, some people hate it. There's a lot of feelings around that, but people are getting into the groove on that. And then paragraph 4 changed entirely. The previous language had to do with license holder disclosure. That just moved to paragraph 8. It didn't go away. But the new paragraph 4 added language to address leases in which the seller is a party. So this requires some front-end work for a seller and the seller's agent to figure out what leases do we have in place and make those leases available. It also prohibits a seller from executing any new lease or amending any current lease without buyer's consent after the effective date of the contract. So those are some big changes. So those have been in effect since April. And then, as of yesterday, we had another round of contract changes. These were not nearly as substantial. They're based on legislative changes from the 87th legislative session, which ended into May. So the first one on that is paragraph 6E7. It aligns the contract language with the statutory change that relates to public improvement districts. There are now some notice requirements if a property is in a PID. Also, paragraph 22 is amended to add a box in the event that an addendum is used related to those PIDs. And then voluntary use, we have an addendum that provides information for a public improvement district. That's a voluntary form. We anticipate that other forms like it will be drafted and utilized by PIDs and other organizations, but we have that available on our website for use. And then another tiny change, but a change nonetheless, to paragraph 7H. It just accounts for a shift. As of yesterday, TREC no longer regulates the residential service companies. They are now regulated by the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, but our previous contract mentioned that a residential service company is licensed by TREC. So that was eliminated in the new draft. So new contracts as of yesterday, those shouldn't be monumental, but we received a good question last week that I want to repeat here, and that is, what happens if you pull a form on August 31st, you send it, with an offer, you send it to a seller on September 1st, but it's the old form. Is that okay? No. Anything with an effective date of September 1st, 2021 or later needs to be on that new form. So there's a window where that's going to be probably pretty frustrating or require a little bit of duplicative work, but that is because of the language included in the statutory change. There's no wiggle room there. Few other things that have just happened related to rules and regulations at TREC recently, or just things we've been seeing. There's an increase in CE requirements, no increase in hours, but license holders are required to have 3 hours of contracts class now. We're really looking to determine how best to equip our license holders just to be the best they can be. Heard from a lot of license holders about the need for more education. Much of that was related to filling out a contract. So this is in direct response to that. License holders can go and look for classes that satisfy that contracts requirement on our website. And we also have some tools for license holders to determine whether or not they've taken something that already satisfies that. So our website is real helpful for that. We've also just updated our standards of practice for inspectors, and we've changed the form that inspectors use to make that more reader-friendly. So that's a big change. We've just put out an article. We're seeing more people asking about walkthrough inspections, where you don't have an inspection report done, you just have an inspector come and point things out. And that's prohibited in Texas. That's against our rules. If an inspector comes and does an inspection, they must produce a report, and it must be on our form. And so I want to make sure that our industry knows that that's unacceptable. And really, that's for consumer protection. Lastly, escalation clauses. In this crazy market, we've seen folks wanting to use an escalation clause, the concept of, in an offer, I'll pay X amount more than the highest offer. And a license holder cannot draft language to that effect. That's the unauthorized practice of law. So if there's a buyer interested in utilizing an escalation clause like that, they need to hire their own lawyer, not the license holder's lawyer, but the buyer's lawyer to draft that language. They're not a good idea. There are never, multiple offers that are exactly alike, that just have, cost being the difference, or very rarely. So it really muddies the water in a way that is not a good idea. But there's very limited avenues for using those escalation clauses just with a private attorney. Scott, what have I missed?
You did an awesome job recapping. I just want to kind of go back on the big changes with paragraph 5 with the earnest money and option money, and paragraph 4 with the leases. I want to commend, not only TREC, but the broker lawyer committee. They sat down with the Texas Land and Title Association. They sat down with the Texas Realtors because we had tried to, start the change as far as earnest money and option money almost 2 years previously. And we really wanted input from all the industry to see, how we could get it right. And I think we did. The paragraph 4 on the leases it's a huge, huge impact on the business here locally in El Paso, and I'm sure other areas where we have a large number of solar panels. And every solar panel company, every solar panel contract is different as far as, can they be assumed? What's the cost of assuming? Can they be moved? What's the cost of moving it? And so that was something that was really impacting the industry that really nobody had an eye on. So when the fixture lease came out, you think of propane tanks and security systems and stuff, it's really had a big impact on the solar panels. And so I think that, shed a lot of light on what due diligence the listing agent needs to do up front. And then, of course, existing leases, that was always part of the contract, but paragraph 4 certainly spelt it out with a lease addendum, almost like an estoppel certificate on a commercial transaction, where it talks about, give me a copy of the leases, give me copies of, security deposits and everything. So I think those changes were just really needed to really show the transparency in the transaction. And then the one change on the public improvement district, it certainly gives the seller an affirmative, a responsibility to confirm if it's in a public improvement district. It used to just be a notice it could be. So that's probably a good change. And so, I think overall good changes. Now, Chelsea mentioned the 3-hour contracts. TREC was very careful to make this as local as possible. So if you want a 3 hours class on the coast on wind insurance and stuff like that, it can be formatted for that local market. And then I forgot how many classes we approved within like the first 30 days. If you had an existing contract class, you could submit it for fast track approval for this 3 hour requirement. So we've really made it to where a local provider can really structure the thing on what's going on locally. Probably less than 4% of our transactions in El Paso, have a homeowners association. We probably don't need 2 hours training on homeowners association where we might on solar panels. So I think the changes in the 3 hour contracts class were needed, but we also tried to make it, as user friendly as we can for the local market and local providers. Chelsea had mentioned this yesterday. We were talking Legal 1, Legal 2 used to count for your ethics. If you're a member of the association or the Realtor Association, it no longer does. And so that's been a change. I think, I could be wrong on this. I think if you took it 19, it still counted through 21, but that's probably one of the changes with the education. And then escalation clauses, Chelsea touched on that. Everybody wants to pay $1 more than the last person, but we cannot practice law. So those are probably the big changes that have impacted us.
So we have a process that all state agencies have to develop rules, and rules are really extensions of laws, and then they have the effect of law. And the way that rules are developed at any state agency is that they're proposed by our commission after review and consideration, and that proposal is a proposal to submit them for public comments. And so then they are publicized for 30 days for the public to comment on them and to make recommendations, to say these are wonderful rules, these are terrible rules, they would be perfect if ... that type of thing. And previously we had an email address where those comments were submitted, which was administratively hard, and it was hard for license holders or other members of the public to determine how best to comment. And so we've made that process very easy. There's a tool now on our website that allows someone to a drop-down menu that says, I want to comment on this specific rule, and then it allows for that comment. So it's much easier to submit public comments now than before. And then that allows us on the back end to have all the comments in one place, where to avoid the mistake of like missing a comment here or there that may come from just having an email address. So we're really excited about that. We've gone through a few rounds of utilizing that, and it's been very helpful, and we've seen an increase in comments submitted, which makes the process better. I mentioned the rulemaking process. After that 30-day comment period, then those comments are considered by staff, and then likely, most often, an advisory committee of the subject matter the rules related to, and then it goes back to the full commission for their consideration for adoption. And the adoption is when the rule becomes law, essentially, after they vote to adopt it, and then after a period of time, it becomes in effect. So that's the rulemaking process. It means it takes at least 6 months or so to change or to adopt a rule.
And one other thing I know Chelsea mentioned earlier was the website and some of the tools available on the website. One of our main focuses is customer service, returning phone calls, returning emails, answering the phone, minimizing hold times, and so forth. Just in the last couple of years, we've had a couple of really neat additions to the website. One of them is the application tracker, where if you get your paperwork in for your application to take the test, you can kind of see where it is. Has the certificates been received? Have the fingerprints been reviewed? The entire process. And one of the biggest advantages is 90 days out from your license expiring, you can go in and click on your license and look on your education. It will tell you what classes you have, what classes you're missing. So if you need 18 hours and you have legal 2 and you have contracts, it will tell you have 7 hours, you're missing legal 1 for 4 hours, and then additional hours. So that not only helps the licensees, but also helps the broker track, what classes do you need, what classes do you have, and how many total hours. And that's the same way with the salesperson's apprentice education. If you need the 90 hours of SAE, then legal 1, legal 2. So those 2 tools right there can certainly help you, find out where you're at as far as renewing or in the process of taking a license. And we're constantly trying to get more tools like that on our website, to help the license holders know exactly what's going on, and also give us the ability to maybe minimize some of the calls and emails, because information is there for the license holders.
We want to make it easy on the license holder to receive information. Scott mentioned our focus on customer service. That's been a focus that's been ongoing for the last couple of years. I'm really proud of the efforts the agency has made to do better at customer service, to get that hold time down, so that when we receive calls where someone's not waiting on hold for long periods of time. Right now, our average is higher than I'd like it to be. It's about 4 minutes. And that's because we're down some staff. We've just hired 8 more folks to answer the phones to get that hold time down to more like 1 to 2 minutes. But for any license holder that hates to wait on hold. Calling first thing in the morning or last thing at night is the best case scenario. We're open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Our phones are open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Many of our folks are working from home, so you may hear a dog barking in the background, and that just helps people remember that Trek is made up of people with a little bit of a life. But we have made great strides on customer service, and I'm proud of that work.
Well, thank you both for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We love the Real Estate Research Center and are happy to be partners with y'all.
Thanks again, Chelsea and Scott. To learn how to get a Texas real estate license, check out our latest guide. This primer by Trek former General Counsel Carrie Lewis can help you get started. It covers all the important requirements and steps for both a real estate sales agent and individual broker licensees. The link is on our podcast webpage and in the YouTube description box. For more from Trek, visit their website. That's trec.texas.gov. The Commission's website has licensing forms, courses, and news that every Texas real estate professional should be aware of. We post a link to it on our podcast webpage. And while your browser's open, head to our website to check out our research library. It includes a wide variety of research reports and articles. Our latest topics include Houston's use of limited purpose annexation, a 2021 mid-year commercial report, methods for obtaining potable water, best practices for sales agents, chronic wasting disease, and more. The link is on our podcast webpage. That's going to be it for today's podcast. If you're looking for more from the Texas Real Estate Research Center, head to our website. That's www.recenter.tamu.edu. There, you'll find the latest data, research articles, blogs, news, and more. You can also check out the Center's News Talk Texas database, which is updated daily with the biggest headlines in Texas real estate. You can also subscribe to Recon, our biweekly newsletter, to get all the biggest stories sent straight to your inbox. To stay up to date on when articles are published on our website, follow the Texas Real Estate Research Center on social media. You can find us with the handle @RECenterTX on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. For more podcasts like these, you can subscribe on iTunes or to our YouTube channel. All podcasts are also available for free on our website. Thanks for joining us today in the Real Estate Red Zone, brought to you by the Texas Real Estate Research Center in College Station, Texas, where we've been helping Texans make the best real estate decisions since 1971. This is Haley Reeder, and I'll see you next time. Bye!